Okay, so today was the first day of confirmation hearings for Trump's new potential cabinet, and we are starting with Pete Hegseth, who is Trump's pick to be the head of the Secretary of the Department of Defense. Now, I'm from what I've heard, it sounds like the Republicans are really going out of their way to make sure that they confirm him. But let's get right to the article before I go into other things I've heard on the news. So, Pete Hegseth, President-elect Donald Trump's pick for defense secretary, publicly faced senators for the first time after weeks of questions from Democrats and praise from Republicans about his unconventional resume. Hegseth, a former combat veteran and TV news host, says he will be a change agent and a warrior as Republicans demand new and strong leadership at the Pentagon. Democrats say Hegseth's lack of experience running a huge department, his past comments about women and black troops, and allegations of excessive drinking and sexual misconduct make him unfit to serve. Well, that last one, obviously, Republicans don't give a shit about. I mean, look at who they elected president. So, yeah. And what does change agent even mean? Or a warrior, because Lloyd Austin is a former general. I mean, traditionally, the defense secretary is a civilian, but the last one wasn't. And yet Pete Hegseth is acting like this is something that's never happened before. Okay? Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Senator Roger Wicker, a Republican from Mississippi, called Hegseth's nomination unconventional, but compared him to Trump, saying that may just be what it takes. Let me try that again. But compared him to Trump, saying that may just be what makes him an excellent choice. Are you kidding me? Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed, the committee's top Democrat, said Hegseth lacks the character and the competence to lead the Defense Department. Reed said he has voted to confirm the 9 previous defense secretaries, including in Trump's first term, but will not support Hegseth. Right, because in Trump's first term, his picks were, still competent. It wasn't a complete loyalty test that these are just a bunch of schmucks who don't know what the hell they're doing. His confirmation would be an insult to the men and women who have sworn to uphold their own apolitical duty to the Constitution, Reed said. Here are some takeaways from Hegseth's confirmation hearing. Hegseth told senators that Trump's primary charge to him was to bring the warrior culture back to the Department of Defense, whatever the hell that means, and that he wants a Pentagon laser-focused on warfighting, lethality, meritocracy, standards, and readiness. Okay, that sounds good, but that implies that isn't happening, which... what the fuck are you talking about? Republicans have criticized President Joe Biden's Pentagon for encouraging diversity, equity, and inclusion and says there's no place for woke culture in the military. Translation, only white men are capable of being soldiers. Because that is what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. Anybody who isn't a straight white man. Cis straight white man. So, yeah. basically they have this idea of what a soldier looks like, and he looks like G.I. Joe. And literally nobody else, if you ignore the fact that not all the G.I. Joes were actually that, but the so quote unquote leader was that. So that's what they see. They ignore everything else. All right. Reed said he wants Hegseth to explain why DEI efforts make the military weak and how you propose to undo that without undermining military leadership and harming readiness, recruitment, and retention. Exactly. Because recruitment numbers are down in the military. For whatever reason, they're down. So you want to take anyone who is not white, who is not straight, and who is not cis, and tell them you needn't apply. So, okay, how is that going to improve recruitment when you're just telling only a certain percentage of people need apply? So, yeah, that's not going to help anything. Not to mention, it's getting rid of a bunch of people who are already in the military who don't fit the cis straight white man criteria. So you're getting rid of a bunch of capable people who want to be in the military simply because you think only white men are worthy of anything. Hegseth said that the military was a forerunner in courageous racial integration in ways no other institutions were willing to do, but argued that modern diversity and inclusion policies divide troops and didn't prioritize meritocracy. Okay, so basically he's saying it's great that black people are in the military, but we can't have too much. There should be only so many black people. Is how I'm reading that. Because what? And that they don't prioritize meritocracy? That's telling me that what people think of as DEI is that only cis straight white men are competent enough to make it as officers, to be the bigwigs. That if you are not that, then obviously you got special treatment to get there. So he gives the game away of being a fucking full-blown racist. He doesn't mind having non-white, non-male, non-cis, non-straight people in the military. He just doesn't think that they should be anything but cannon fodder. I'm sorry, what? Anyway, Hegseth said oh wait, I already read that. Okay. A secretary, that's not the part I wanted to read. Republicans have praised Hegseth's lack of a high-level leadership role. Hegseth said it's time to give someone with dust on his boots the helm. So basically, you're claiming that people like Lloyd Austin have never seen combat? I'm not exactly sure what he thinks he's saying here. But Hegseth would not be the first defense secretary to have served in combat. Far from it. An array of previous secretaries have had combat service, dodging bombs and leading troops into the fight, including current Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who was a leader in the initial invasion into Iraq. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Mattis, Trump's first defense secretary, fought in the Gulf War and later retired as a 4-star general. And Trump's final acting Pentagon chief, Chris Miller, served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan as an Army Special Forces officer. He later retired as a colonel. Chuck Hagel, who served under former President Barack Obama, was the first former enlisted soldier to become defense secretary. He served as a sergeant on the front lines in Vietnam. Hegseth made overtures to women and black troops, an attempt to blunt some of the criticism of his previous comments that women should straight up not serve in combat, and his suggestions that some black troops may not be qualified. Hence his meritocracy comment, because, only, like I said, only cis straight white men are actually competent enough to make it up the ranks. Everyone else is cannon fodder. It would be the privilege of a lifetime if confirmed to be the Secretary of Defense for all men and women in uniform, Hegseth said. At the same time, he implied that the Pentagon had lower standards for women to fight without giving examples of those standards. Right, because he wants to portray the cis straight white man as this victim of DEI, because only he has to serve to the utmost standards, and everyone else gets a pass because they're not that. Because he's out and out a bigot. But he's trying really hard to portray himself as not being that. All right. The standards need to be the same, and they need to be high, Hegseth said, adding that where those standards have been eroded to meet diversity quotas, that should be under review. And again, there is no evidence that those standards have been weakened. I mean, he's just trying to come up with bullshit reasons why it should be an all-white male military. All cis straight white male military. And he's giving platitudes, he's giving lip service to everyone else by claiming, oh yeah, they just don't really have what it takes because they're just getting in because of their sex, their race, their sexual orientation, gender identity. They're not actually getting in on merit. Because, he's not actually a bigot or anything. All right. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat, told Hegseth that his quotas about women are terrible and harmful to morale. Sorry, his quotes. I read it right the first time. You will have to change how you see women to do this job, she said. A senior defense official who was not authorized to talk with the media and spoke on condition of anonymity said the standards for military service have not been lowered, and that standards are based on each field and based on ability, not gender. Hegseth was questioned about the issue by Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, an Iraq veteran and a survivor of sexual assault. Hegseth reiterated an earlier promise to Ernst that he will hire a senior official to prioritize those cases in the military. And interesting, she initially was a no vote, and all of a sudden, not only is she willing to defend him, but she didn't want to actually meet with the sexual assault victims and hear their side. Because, same thing with Susan Collins, but Susan Collins is just, she doesn't. Anyway, that tells me that they don't want to hear from these survivors simply because then they might actually have to vote against him. And to ensure they don't have a reason to vote against him, they're just not going to meet with the survivors. All right. Reed told Wicker at the beginning of the hearing that he believes the FBI background check on Hegseth was insufficient. There are still FBI obligations to talk to people, Reed said. The background check did not probe or produce new information beyond what's already in the public realm about Hegseth, according to a person familiar with the situation who insisted on anonymity to discuss it. Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, asked Hegseth if he'd be willing to submit to an expanded background check with interviews of former colleagues, ex-wives, sexual assault survivors, and others. And I'm not in charge of FBI background checks, Hegseth said, which technically true. But considering that he's Trump's pick and he's a yes man, obviously the FBI is not going to do such checks. Hegseth's hearing was focused far more on character issues than recent defense nominees have faced. Senators also questioned whether Hegseth has the management experience to do the job. Austin and Mattis faced questions about being recently retired four-star generals, but had significant support and were grilled on policy. Mark Esper, the only other Trump defense nominee to get a hearing, faced a number of questions about keeping the military apolitical and how he would make decisions on the use of military force. Even Hegseth's Republican supporters spent a great deal of time digging into character and leadership issues to give him opportunities to defend himself. North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer praised his faith, which I don't know what that has to do with being a defense secretary, but okay. While Montana Senator Tim Sheehy asked him how many asked him how many push-ups he could do. Okay, again, not relevant to being a defense secretary. I mean, I don't believe he has to do push-ups as part of his job. Maybe at one point he did, but... Several Republicans praised his military service and described him as tough. Right, that is totally a word I would use for an alcoholic. Tough. Hegseth acknowledged his only run organizations with at most a couple hundred people and said he would surround himself with knowledgeable staff. I know what I don't know, Hegseth said. Which would sound good if it weren't for the fact that Trump has basically insisted on a loyalty pledge. So how can you have both knowledgeable staff and people who will blindly do whatever Trump wants? Now, granted, it's Hegseth who they have to answer to. So as long as he's a yes man, I guess that's enough. But I highly doubt that. Hegseth did not directly address the allegations of sexual misconduct and aggressively pushed back on Democrats who asked questions about it, calling it a coordinated smear campaign. No, sweetheart. It's about getting to the truth to see if you're worthy of this job. But again, the Republicans and a lot of very, very confused people supported Trump. They voted for Trump. So, obviously, sexual misconduct is not a red line for these people. I'm not a perfect person, but redemption is real, Hegseth said. Okay, so which is it? You're not a perfect person, or you're being smeared. Because you can't have it both ways. Either you did the sexual misconduct, or you're an imperfect person. Again, two different things. In 2017, a woman told police that Hegseth sexually assaulted her, according to a detailed investigative report recently made public. Hegseth has denied any wrongdoing and told police at the time that the encounter at a Republican women's event in California was consensual. He was not charged but paid the woman a confidential settlement to head off a potential lawsuit. You know, there are so many people who actually committed sexual assault who are convinced it's consensual because their idea of consensual is just bugging a woman until she finally, in exasperation, agrees to something, because otherwise, just get it over with. Maybe he'll leave me alone. So there is that. But otherwise, how can you think it's consensual when the woman doesn't? That just makes zero sense to me. Especially if you're willing to pay off a woman so there's no lawsuit. Asked by Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono, a Democrat, if he had entered into a settlement, Hegseth replied that he was falsely accused. He has said repeatedly that he is completely cleared. If you're completely cleared, why the hell did you settle? I mean, it's entirely possible that he might have lost even more money if this lawsuit went ahead. But it's highly doubtful. I don't know. I guess it's possible, so I'm not going to go further with that. I guess it's possible. Hirono also asked him about reports of excessive drinking. Hegseth has told Republican senators in meetings over the last month that he will not drink on the job. Right, because that's what alcoholics say. Republicans dismissed the allegations. Senator Markwayne Mullin, a Republican from Oklahoma, noted that Democratic senators have asked Hegseth about his drinking, saying, "How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night?" And I wonder how many of those senators actually hid it well and just that he knew himself that they were drunk. And now people are starting to question that. And that they might actually take him up on the offer of calling them out. Because, maybe you should have kept your fool mouth shut. It's entirely, like I said, it's entirely possible that unlike this schmuck, Hegseth, they can actually hold their liquor. It's not that Hegseth was drunk. It's the fact that he's always freaking drunk. Don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have, Mullin said to his colleagues. You're just giving Democrats ammo. The next time they see a drunk senator taking a vote, they're just going to call him out. Congratulations. They're going to call out unruly behavior now that you've set them up for that. You are a fucking moron. Absolute moron. So anyway, that is the end of this article. And like I said, people like Joni Ernst, Susan Collins have refused to meet with any of the victims of his sexual assault, any of his ex-wives. So basically, they're trying really, really hard to get him confirmed. The only reason that Matt Gaetz had to drop out is because the senators personally knew him and hated his guts. So that was his problem. Not that he actually did any bad behavior. It's because he was just someone that everybody hated. So he's probably going to get confirmed, which sucks. Now, from what I saw, tomorrow confirmation hearings will be for Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio. Pam Bondi for Attorney General. She's the one who replaced Matt Gaetz. And Marco Rubio. So those two, even though they have plenty of issues, both of them at least seem more adult-like than, say, someone like Pete Hegseth. Still, I predict that they're both going to be loyal to Trump, especially Pam Bondi, who was investigating Trump University until he handed her a check for her campaign, and all of a sudden that investigation went away. Marco might be a slightly different case, but I'm expecting him to just, bend over backwards for Trump. So, yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned, but he's up for Secretary of State. So, I believe that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.